and you can find yourself running into the ground fairly quickly. And so I encourage everyone, maintain some stuff outside of work. And it's easy to get carried away. Obviously, right now, anesthesia is really in demand, and they're paying a ton of money for overtime or contract work. And people are here like gobbling up all these hours. I'm like, yeah, but do you take any time to do the things that bring you joy or that give you energy? Like I'm sure you've noticed, you get home from a day at work, you're usually pretty tired. I'm sure you feel very different after a day of working on your side hustle or your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of lights you up and gives you energy more than taking it.
Hello, everyone. Today on Scrubs Unzipped, I have a very special guest. Her name is Kathryn. Hi, Kathryn. How are you today?
Great. How are you?
I'm awesome. It's like the sun is shining, and I'm like, wow.
Life is good.
But I'm inside, so like it's nice looking outside when it's nice, but not being outside with not any AC.
Yes, I agree. Looking outside and thinking, oh, well, let me go out for a minute and enjoy this. And I'm back inside within like 5 minutes because it's so
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you like I know what do you do now?
Right. So I recently started a new position as president of operations for Copient Health, which is an OR block scheduling optimization platform. It's a tech startup, and it is, I love it. I'm having so much fun. It is completely different from what I've done for the rest of my career.
Oh, wow. So can you tell me a little bit about like your career? I know you were an anesthesiologist assistant and like how did you start from there to like how where you are now?
Right. It was not easy. As anyone in healthcare knows, it's sort of hard to find opportunities outside of healthcare. I think a lot of times there are a lot of opportunities for nurses because there's such a large population that people kind of market to them, put those opportunities out there. For what I do, anesthesia is so narrowly focused and it's such a small little niche that there really aren't many opportunities for growth outside of clinical practice that I've experienced. There are leadership positions, which I tried. There are teaching opportunities, which I explored, but that's pretty much it. If you get into leadership, you can kind of climb the ranks to hospital administration in some places. I think APP leadership is becoming more of a hot topic as we grow. But again, the opportunities are few and far between. And
Yeah.
so I knew from a very early point in my career that I would do something beyond clinical practice at some point. So I explored going back to school. I explored other things, other skills and careers. And I tried so many different things, just trying to find something that felt as exciting as clinical practice did in the beginning. I really like learning and being challenged. And after a few years and getting fairly comfortable in my role, I kind of wanted a new challenge. And so I explored a lot of different things. And the thing that really caught my attention was the tech startup community. I was sort of just exploring things and trying whatever I could find that sounded vaguely interesting. And I went to a event at a technology startup focused space here in Atlanta. It's called Atlanta Tech Village. And I absolutely loved it. I loved the energy. It was a room full of people who had big dreams and lots of energy and were really excited about doing something that was going to make the world better in some way or another. And I just felt like I had found my people. I've always been pretty energetic and pretty driven, and I love making little improvements and things where I can. And so I felt like, wow, this is it. And it, in the beginning, I tried starting my own company. We built a tech platform, me and my team. We really tried to get it out there. and I learned a lot doing it, but also realized that I was probably not in the position to start my own company at that time, for, a few reasons. And so I started exploring job opportunities with other companies.
Mm,
And I think because of my experience in this space, because people had seen me, gotten to know me, seen my work ethic, seen my skills in action, I was at the pitch competitions and I was at the events, and they saw how hard I worked on my company. And so that allowed me to get an opportunity with the company I'm with now, Copient Health. And once I started with the company, quickly things changed as they do in startups. Things can change overnight. It's very fast moving. And a opportunity arose to lead the platform. And I was offered the opportunity and I jumped at it. It is essentially, my dream opportunity at this point. And I'm really loving it. I love being able to jump in. I'm learning every day. I'm challenged every day. And it was really just a case of, trying a bunch of different things until I found the thing that fit. It was almost like dating, like dating different jobs. Like, let me
mhm,
go on a date with this one. Nope, that's not it. Oh, I'm going on a date with this one. That's not it. And so when I found the the environment that really felt like home, then I just had to figure out where my place was in that environment. And so it took, people think it happened very quickly, but it's been years of kind of
mm,
trying different things and just preparing myself for when the opportunity came around. And the opportunity didn't fall in my lap either. I really aggressively pursued it.
yeah.
But that's another thing that from the outside it looks like it might have just kind of popped up. But I was really, getting in touch with everyone. Hey, do you have any openings? Hey, I think I'd be a great fit for this. Hey, do you have anything coming up? And so, that's just who I am. And I think it's hard and it's uncomfortable, but that's how I got to the place that I wanted to be, um, which was, just something new and challenging.
Wow. And I'm very familiar with Atlantic Tech Village. I actually gave a talk at the Women in Tech event. Like it happens every second Wednesday. So
Yeah.
I gave a talk about burnout, and I usually give talks about burnout in healthcare, but I realized that everyone can experience burnout. So I've kind of modified it for burnout in tech, and it was like a very great experience. And I think like you should definitely, if you haven't already, like you should definitely be like a speaker
Thank
there.
you. That would be very full circle because the first event that I went to that got me interested was one of those talks. It was
Oh,
the Women in
really?
Tech talk. Yes.
Okay.
Back in, it must have been like 2021, I think I went
Oh,
to one.
wow.
And so yeah,
Yeah.
I'm familiar with those and I have basically everything to thank, I have to thank that event for where I am now, because if it weren't for that, I don't know where I would have really seen how amazing that community is. And the fact that they put on a specific event to encourage women in
Hmm.
tech is just, I mean, it speaks volumes about their whole mission, and so supportive. I'm sure if you've been around there, like they are very intentional about inclusivity and opportunity and building each other up. And it's rare to find that,
It
you know?
is.
So it's a
Yeah.
special, special place.
I actually found it online on Eventbrite, but I've been going for the past 2 years and I felt kind of out of place a little bit because I'm a respiratory therapist. I'm not
Yeah.
like my main job is not tech, but I do tech behind the scenes, like with my podcast and with graphic designing, so and website building. So like my side hustles, I do tech, but my
Yeah.
main job is not tech. And then everyone would come up to me like, "What do you do?" Like, "Oh, I'm a respiratory therapist."
I have the same thing because, this is fairly recent that my full-time job is non-clinical, because until then they'd say, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm an anesthesiologist assistant, but I dabble. I started a company on the side." And but I think that's the story for a lot of people there because, very few people are connected or resourced enough to just quit their job and start something full time right off the bat. A lot of people do it on the side for a long time. And that's the side of the story that doesn't always get told. I think we hear about these unicorn moonshot stories, and we don't realize that a lot of people that start successful companies, they do it on the side of their day job, and they hustle for a long time and have a lot of
Mhm.
failures before they succeed. And I hope that that story gets told a little bit more because, a lot of people I know in healthcare, they might want to start a company and they think, oh, you have to like leave your job and do this and that. And I say, no, like you can just, you know, you can validate demand while you keep your day job and then you can cut back hours. You can, figure it out as you go, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I was exploring things for years before I was able to actually make the leap and start something completely new.
Mhm. And when you mentioned when in your introduction that you like really you checked in with people, I feel like relationships are like the biggest part of how you go from position to position. So can you tell me how
Yes.
relationships helped you?
Absolutely. I mean, even in my clinical background, right now, demand is so high, you can essentially pick up the phone and anyone will give you a job if you can prove that you have the license. But it wasn't always that way. And so, for the majority of my career, it was actually quite hard to get jobs, especially at in-demand places. And the way that I got pretty much every job was through a warm introduction, or I had a friend that worked there. Um, most of the jobs I got, I had no business getting based on my resume alone. It was, because someone knew me or because I got along well with someone who was hiring, whatever the case. And so I have been telling this to students for a long time, like maintain those connections. You never know when and maybe this person works at this hospital now, but you never know when you're going to cross paths again. Or,
Mhm.
it's interesting, my friends from grad school, who I have not really kept in touch with, they're now all program directors
Oh,
or,
wow.
like we've all been doing this for a long time and a lot of them have risen up quite high. And so now it's like, okay, well, if I wanted a job teaching, I have 5 friends in program director positions that I could call on. And that's really just, power of personal connection. And that's clinical. When you get into the business space, it's even more so because,
Mm.
you know, there are executive recruiters and people find each other through LinkedIn and whatnot, but the vast majority of the jobs that I've seen, it's been, once you work with someone one time and they have a good experience, then you can work with them again and again in different capacities and people move around. But again, it's like it's a big community, but it's a small community. And you tend to see the same names over and over again. And if you're intentional, I've seen multiple times people get to a really excellent spot in their career simply by being intentional in their networking.
Mm.
And that meaning not being slimy, not,
Mhm.
like having the most Facebook friends or followers or whatever, but just like maintaining genuine connections with people and going to the events and being at the talks and the happy hours and the whatever and really being intentional, with who you connect with and, go up and say hi and how are you doing and stay in touch and connect on LinkedIn. And that will provide so much value that I feel like healthcare providers kind of miss out on because we don't really use LinkedIn a whole lot.
Mhm.
If you're clinical, because there doesn't appear to be a ton of benefit, but I hope to see that change a little bit because I think it can be, you can miss out on a lot of opportunities by not networking and then maintaining your network.
Mhm.
And the flip side, when I asked for this job, the unbeknownst to me, the CEO was asking people who I had known for years through Atlanta Tech Village and asking
Ooh.
like, you know, who is this person? Is she good? Is she hardworking? All that stuff. And I had multiple people with a lot of street cred who were vouching for me.
Mhm.
And I didn't know it at the time when I was making these connections that these people would one day get me a job. I was just getting out there and trying to be around people who were doing things I like doing and become friends with interesting people and hear about what they do. So, if you come at it from a genuine place and you're intentional about maintaining those relationships in a real way, it will eventually pay off more than likely.
That's like what I'm trying to do with my Scrubs Unzipped podcast because I'm an RT, a respiratory therapist, and like I spend time with my coworkers like for 12-hour nights, and I get to hear like all of their stories about like what they're passionate about besides their job. And I just felt like, wouldn't it be cool to like see the stories behind the scrubs? Like, because like we're humans, and even with this COVID pandemic that people say it's over, but I feel like picking up again. So, so like even with that, like most people don't realize that there's like a heartbeat behind like a cape. Like we're we can be thought of as superheroes, but we're also humans and we also have emotions and feelings. And I just felt like when I am into my passions, the things that I love to do, like comedy and singing and music, like I'm just more joyful person.
I think it's important too when you have a job like yours. I mean, the pandemic was a particularly poignant example of the stress that our job has all the time that we are all kind of used to. Um, but when you talk about burnout, I've seen it in my coworkers, especially during the pandemic, but even in the fallout after the pandemic, a lot of people seem to just never recover. And I think having other things besides work is incredibly important. And it's especially important for a job where you really have the potential to carry a lot of stress with you. And it's, when we see, I don't know how often you see was it RT, but I mean, I see death on a regular basis and you see illness is all you see at work. I try to explain to people, I say, do you like going to the hospital? And they're like, oh God, no, I hate it. I'm like, that's where I work every single day. Like,
Yeah.
this is, most people avoid it like the plague. And I'm like, that's literally where I walk in and spend eight to 16 hours every day. And so I think if you don't have something to use other parts of your brain and to kind of find the joy in life again, you can find yourself running into the ground fairly quickly. And so I encourage everyone, maintain some stuff outside of work. And it's easy to get carried away. Obviously, right now, anesthesia is really in demand, and they're paying a ton of money for overtime or contract work. And people are here like gobbling up all these hours. I'm like, yeah, but do you take any time to do the things that bring you joy or that give you energy? Like I'm sure you've noticed, you get home from a day at work, you're usually pretty tired. I'm sure you feel very different after a day of working on your side hustle or your podcast.
Hmm.
Like it kind of lights you up and gives you energy more than taking it. And that's important to maintain, to be a whole person and not just think that, your only value is to do your clinical job. It's important for you to do other things too, and creative things and challenging things and learning things. And I
Hmm.
hope that becomes more popular, as I think the new generation is much more focused on work-life balance than
Hmm.
my generation, even, or prior generations. It was much more work, 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 and then
Hmm.
life comes when you retire, which is silly. So I hope that that's a positive shift that's happening with the younger generation that's kind of like, no, I don't want to work 100 hours a week. I actually want to have a life.
Are you serious? You don't want to sleep and work in the same place?
I mean, but that's what, like, forever. It's crazy. And I think they view younger people as lazy. And I'm like, no, they're just standing up for, their own health and well-being. But like the older generation, man, they just worked all the time. I worked with someone straight out of school, at a trauma facility, so it's 24 hours, and he literally had a full-time job where he would work 7 to 3. He would drive from that job to this other trauma hospital, work 3 to 11, go home and sleep for like 4 or 5 hours, and then get up and do the whole thing. So he basically had two full-time jobs
Wow.
and two like very stressful full-time jobs. And I'm like, and he was, he's doing this, and he had young kids, and I'm like, what's the point? Like,
Mm.
what are you doing this for? Your kids are going to be out of the house and you're going to have missed the whole thing. And I think, I have young kids now, and I'm so glad that I kind of figured that out earlier rather than later. And I was able to like go part-time when they were little. And now I am able to have a more flexible schedule so I can be there for the important events. And, um, you know, like I would always say, if I got hit by a bus, the hospital would replace me in 2 weeks, but my kids will spend the rest of their life trying to fill that hole. And I just think that's really important, whether you have kids or not. You have someone that cares about you, and you have friends, and you have hobbies, and you know, you do exist outside of the workplace, and it's important to remember how, what's the most important.
Yeah, and it seems like as a healthcare worker, we are really good at taking care of other people, but not ourselves. Have you noticed that?
Have you seen, well, I actually went down a deep rabbit hole with this. There are multiple studies out there that show that healthcare workers actually have a higher incidence of chronic diseases than the general population. And I just think that's a crime. I mean, we know better, right? And I see it. I see it in my coworkers. I'm like, and I see it in a hospital level too. They're giving us pizza and donuts, and I'm like,
Mhm.
y'all, like,
And
no.
bagels.
Yeah, I'm like, give us a veggie tray or something. This is an Institute of Health, supposedly. But the early waking, all of us have whack circadian rhythms. Like you're not sleeping at night if you're doing night shift. Everything's thrown off. Stressful situations, underhydrated because, if you're on the floor or in the OR all day, you can't
Can
just go to
go
the
to the
bathroom. So
bathroom.
nobody's drinking water. They're eating convenience foods. A lot of people are skipping breakfast, drinking 8 cups of coffee to stay up. Like, not to mention the effect of chronic stress on your body. This is like a real issue that we really haven't paid attention to. But I do believe that as a society, we're not taking care of the people that are taking care of us. And as healthcare workers, we are not prioritizing our own health as much as we should. I think of, if you went to a spa to get a facial and the woman walked out and her face was full of acne, you'd be like, no thanks.
Hmm.
So why are we going to hospitals to get better, being treated by people who are not taking care of themselves? It doesn't really fit with the whole, like, if we want to be beacons of wellness, it starts with us. And we have to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of others, if that is what you feel called to do. You can't take care of others if you're breaking down.
And I think that is what is missing from the curriculum because when I went to school, there was nothing about like wellness, and it was just like learn these ventilator waveforms and make sure you know the blood gases, the ABGs, the electrolyte imbalances. Make sure you know how to fix this. And it was nothing about like mental health and making sure you are well to
Yeah.
to take care of other people because our decision making is can be life and death. And if you're like stressed out from something that happened at the job or at work, like it hinders your decision making skills.
Yeah.
And it really depends on like where you work and how like when you've worked in your clinical setting, like do the people that you worked for were they like I would say like holistic or were they like
Well, it depends. I mean, I've worked a lot of different places. I've been doing this for almost 13 years, and I've,
okay.
worked at outpatient facilities, university hospitals, trauma hospital, small private hospital, like, everything in between. And so it really varies. And even within one facility, I think it can be, you know, provider specific. I have some attendings who are very into wellness, and we will just sit there and like chit chat about, like different like retreats and meditation and eat and food and like, whatever. And then I have a lot of people, I mean, they're attendings I've worked with, they're anesthesiologists and they're smoking on their break. And I'm like, this doesn't, they're the same people that'll complain about a patient who smokes. And it like doesn't match up. So I think it varies widely, but I love the point that you said, like in school, they didn't even mention any of that. And I think that that is shifting. And I think that, at the end of the day, they're here to teach you how to do a job.
Mhm.
And I hope that we see the proliferation of more external resources that are at least advertised um, in regards to mental well being. We lose, I would venture to say, at least one student every year due to something preventable, like addiction or suicide. Addiction is a really, really big issue in our community. Anesthesia
Mm.
has access to all the
Yes.
controlled substances. And the last time I heard the statistic, it was like 1 in 10 anesthesia providers will have an addiction issue at some point in their career, which is staggering. I mean, 10%. Like when I looked around in my class and I saw, okay, my class has 20 people in it, two of us are going to have an issue at some point. That's scary to think about because at the time everyone seems fine, but you're like statistically, and I can say now after practicing for a long time, the people that ended up abusing, sometimes it was like, okay, that tracks. But a lot of times I was shocked. I mean,
Mm.
absolutely shocked at who had addiction issues in the past, who had addiction issues while I was working with them. One person, we discovered it while, like, a day after I had worked with him. He was found in the OR with a needle in his arm.
Mm.
And it's scary because these are like not only the basic humanity of like we all need to protect each other and human life is precious and all of that, but like this is such a valuable resource and we're already like in such short supply, and then we're not protecting the supply that we do have, right? Like our country's health depends on highly trained, highly skilled healthcare providers and
Mhm.
highly specialized. And so, of that tiny little pool, you would think that we would be really conscientious of protecting them and providing them with the resources that they need to stay well. And I just don't see that happening. And so, if the healthcare institutions are not doing that on their own, I hope that some people, the work you're doing included in that, continue to get some more attention and, get a broader audience so that we can pay attention to this as the really significant situation that it is. We need to be protecting these people. We need to be conscious of their needs and the risks associated with having a high stress job. It's
Yeah.
you know we should be paying attention to it.
And I feel that through my research or just being in healthcare for 12 years, so that hospitals or some hospitals and health organizations are profit focused and not patient focused. So, what do you think about that?
I mean, I am currently a part of a company that aims to increase their profits. I can't say that I'm not part of the problem. But I think it is twofold, right? Hospitals, for the most part, are for-profit entities. Even those that are considered not for profit are still driven by profit because that's what enables them to, expand their mission or fund more research. At the end of the day, they're a business. And so I think there's a disconnect between what the public perceives, what the public expects from a healthcare institution, and what the reality is. Unfortunately, most of them are businesses. They are driven to maximize revenue. However, they have this interesting sort of, you know, it's not a limitation, but they can't wildly pursue profit the same way Coca-Cola can, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coca-Cola, we don't care what our drink is doing to people. We're going to make as much money as we can. We are a business. The end.
Mm-hmm.
Any other company that's a business can just wildly pursue profits, with reckless abandon. Hospitals are in a different boat because they are pursuing profit. They do have to remain profitable to stay open. And I think what a lot of people don't understand too is that, like, yes, hospitals are making money, but their margins are like nothing. Like, if you look at the margins for, you know, a tech company, for example, the margins are astronomical. Even a product based company, the margins, should be double digits or greater. Hospitals, the margins are often like single digits. So they have to
Mm-hmm.
provide so much care to make that profit that they are constantly looking for ways to optimize that. And a big driver of that has been the lack of staff. Staffing costs have risen. The last number I saw, they're typically hovering around 50%. So of you know, every bit of care they provide, 50% of that care's cost is allocated to just paying for the staff to provide the care,
Mm,
that's gone up to 55%. And when you're looking at these really thin margins to begin with, 5% difference is a big deal. This isn't like, McDonald's makes what I'll just pretend it's 90% profit on each hamburger. And if it goes up to, 95, it's not that big of a deal, or down to 85. They're really running on low margins right now. So yes, I think we would all love to live in a world where healthcare was just like a a service, and like the fire department, right? Like the fire department isn't looking at maximizing revenue, it's a government run product. The flip side of that I think people don't like to think about, or everyone has their own opinion on this, but I do have colleagues who have worked in an environment of socialized medicine, and it is very different. You cannot
mm,
get whatever treatment you want. You get what the government says they will pay for. And there's much less personal choice. There's much less innovation also,
mm,
because in America, people can stand to build tremendous wealth from innovating, right? If you invent a new procedure, a new medicine, a new product, a new kind of implant, you have the potential to become very wealthy. That doesn't really exist so much in the socialized medicine environment. And
mm,
so there is the good side and the bad side. The good side is it's widely available, it's not astronomically expensive, the standard of care is fairly consistent, and you're not worried about, the facility trying to get money out of you. But the flip side of that is they see much less innovation. The patients have far less personal choice. Things are much more standardized across
mhm,
the board. There's much less individual treatment plan, things happening. And some of that is a benefit. Some of it has really good outcomes. They're more conservative with narcotics than we are, probably why we have part of our large addiction issue in this country. There are some huge benefits, but I don't think anyone has found the perfect system yet. So while I do begrudge our system's need for profit on many occasions, there the benefit of that is not insignificant either. So it's kind of one of those, it is what it is. And as
mm,
healthcare providers, we just have to do the best we can within that framework. Um, and I don't know where it's gonna go. I don't know if, the system will just continue to be bought up by private equity and eventually just be completely 100% for profit. But the
mm,
thing is, there are still hospitals that are not for profit, community hospitals and kind of government subsidized hospitals that treat uninsured population. And, that's important too. And people that work there are real heroes.
yeah.
And I think, you know, our system isn't perfect. The profit question is sticky at best, but it is the way our system is run, and without a major overhaul, that's probably the way it's gonna run. So I think we all just have to kind of find our place within that, and we can still deliver superb, thoughtful care, knowing that we're making the hospital profit, but you're still treating a person
Hmm.
every day. And as long as you keep that in mind, that's what really matters.
Okay, I like that answer.
Very long answer, but that is like, I mean, I've struggled with it. I mean, honestly, there are days where I just think, God, this system is so messed up. And you can just rage against it and you can get really upset, but it's not changing. And so, we
Mm.
kind of just have to work with it, because I don't think anybody knows what the best way to do it is either. It's not like the other way of doing it is perfect. So, until we figure that out.
I think there is a, I definitely think when we talked about earlier about educating in the education process of being a healthcare worker, like there definitely needs to be some initiatives about self care and self help while you are in school. So when you are not in school, you are an advocate for yourself because sometimes we can get run over through the profit machine. And when you have, I feel like I have a less stressful shift when we are fully staffed and overstaffed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's less stress for me, and I can take care of the patients better. So sometimes it's kind of like it's like like if you do, if you don't.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's a really good point to raise that yes, the hospital is a profit machine in most cases. Wherever you work, they're trying to maximize profits. And so if you don't stand up for yourself, nobody else is going to. You know, you have to advocate for yourself. If they're staffing so slim that you're not getting a bathroom break or you don't get to eat lunch or you're having to lift a heavy patient because they haven't hired enough support staff, you have to advocate for yourself because listen, especially if you work for a hospital that's owned by a PE firm, you best believe that the person looking at those numbers and making those decisions has nothing to do with your day to day, right? Most of the
Yes,
people that
they're
are
like
looking at
at
those
the
numbers,
top.
yeah, they've never worked in a hospital. They have no idea when they say, oh, we can cut staffing by 10% and save this much money. They don't have to live with those consequences. And so I think it's up to us to understand that and understand how to operate within that and know what your rights are and be able to recognize when a situation or an environment has become a negative for you, when it has become, I don't want to say toxic, but when if it's draining you and it's making you unsatisfied in your job, or maybe it's even trickling over into your day-to-day life, that's on us to recognize that and then leave because a lot of times, if someone very far removed is crunching the numbers, making the decisions, they don't really pay attention until they have a real problem. So
Yes.
if enough people leave and satisfaction is low enough, then sometimes you get people's attention. Unfortunately, sometimes, squeaky wheel gets the grease and if you don't stand up for yourself, nobody else is going to come in and save you. So if something is not working for you, make it known, talk to a manager, talk to the higher ups. And if nothing changes and it continues to be a bad situation, then go find a place that's a better work environment. Because I think we're seeing a shift now where for a long time, labor was easy to come by. And now it's harder to come by. And people are finally paying attention to culture and employee experience. And again, like we gotta take advantage of that and ride that wave and build more resources that call attention to it because nobody's going to descend from above to save us during our shift. You gotta,
You haven't
you
seen
gotta,
no angels?
yeah, I mean, they're there, but I don't think they're giving me a bathroom break. So,
So I want to talk about so when you were an anesthesia assistant, you were going to Atlanta Tech Village at the same time?
so
Oh.
I knew that I did not want to continue a career in clinical anesthesia for the rest of my life. And so, we had two kids close together when they were babies. It was just kind of survival mode. As they got a little bit older and I had a little bit more bandwidth, we had a little bit more financial security because we didn't have two daycare payments. As those things started to trickle down, we had the decision of, okay, well, we're a little bit better off financially. Do we want to upgrade our house? Do I want a new car? Whatever. And I knew that I wanted to do something. So whether I went back to school or whatever I did, I had a talk with my husband of, this is something that I know I have to do. I know I cannot do anesthesia for the rest of my career. I probably have 30 or 40 years left of working. I know I can't do it for 30 more years. And so we had a talk, and so we decided to keep our expenses low so that I could cut back in hours and have the flexibility to explore some things. So I went down to a really minimal schedule at one point. And it was kind of funny because I feel like most of the people I knew were all talking about how to make more money because our hourly rate was so high and everyone's like clamoring for money. And I was sitting here just working the least possible. Like they would raise our hourly rate and I would cut back hours. I'm like, cool, now I can work less
Yes,
hours and make the
hours.
same amount of money. Um, but the reality is, even at 50% of my salary, I was still doing better than most Americans, so like I can do without a brand new car and a bigger house and whatever other nonsense my coworkers spent their money on. It, expensive watches or, you know, I just sometimes roll my eyes at what people find, they're working all the time and then they blow all their money on something and they have to
Mm.
work some more to pay for it. But I knew that I wanted to do something else. And so I was very intentional with the way that I structured our life and our expenses so that I had the freedom to do that. And, we're still in the same house that we bought when we first got married.
Oh,
And I
wow.
still drive the car that I drove before we got married. We've been married for 8 years.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
thank you. So, I was very intentional about it, and there were absolutely some sacrifices, but what it allowed me to do was to have 2 days a week. I actually got to the point where I was working three 6-hour shifts, and I didn't go in until 11. So I would work as a contractor with this tech startup 2 days a week, and then I would take phone calls in the mornings before work. So I would, drop the kids off, take some meetings, and then go into work. So I was very busy, but I was working not a lot of hours. So it looked to the world like I was living the life and just, coming
Mm.
breezing in for my short little shift. But that's one of the beauties of healthcare. Most of us have the ability to kind of tailor our schedule a little bit more. You can work. When I first started working, I was working 16-hour shifts. So I only worked 3 days a week. But you can kind of make space to explore or to pursue your hobbies. I'm really inspired by a lot of my coworkers. I have one coworker who's a really talented artist, and she went down to 2 days a week so that she could paint the other days. And the
Oh,
thing is,
wow.
you know, our profession allows for that, and I don't think enough people take advantage of it. And if you get to a place where you're financially stable, you can start looking at the next goal. Okay, I can, if I keep working full time, I can do this. Or you can stop and pause and say, well, if I don't take on more expenses, could I maybe cut back my hours so that I can pursue my hobbies, or so that I can have a day a week to just unplug? If you're feeling stressed and burned out, don't wait until you're in a hole. Like, just
Mm-hmm.
start, doing that. So that was how I did that. I kind of structured my schedule to leave days wide open, and that allowed me to go to the talks and be a part of some of the meetings. And at one point I was in a pre-accelerator program at Atlanta Tech Village, and so I structured my schedule around that accelerator program. So I worked 3 days a week, and the other two I was at ATV, start to finish. And it was definitely exhausting.
Mm.
Um, but I knew that it was something I had to do. I knew that without being uncomfortable for a little bit, I'm never going to change, and I'm never going to get that next opportunity. And I'm really glad I did, because I feel like now I'm on another path that I'm really enjoying.
So how long did it take you from you cutting back your hours for being an AA to like where you are now?
I think in total it was close to 3 years.
Okay.
Um, but I don't think that's to say that's how long it takes for everyone. For three of those, let's see, it took 3 years. For 2 of those years, 2.5 of those years, I was pursuing my own company. I was working really hard on my own startup. And, maybe if I had continued pursuing that, that would have eventually taken off too. But at some point after a couple years, I just realized, okay, I think I have to try something else. I don't think this is going to get me where I want to go. And so that's when I kind of pivoted my thought process, and I thought, you know what? Let me go learn from someone who knows what they're doing. Let me go work in a startup, get some experience, and then if I want to pursue my own company, at least I'll have some more knowledge. I'll know what I'm doing. I'll know what I'm getting into. And so, yeah, so it took me a couple years, and I hope that's not discouraging to people, because that whole time I was, there were definitely days where I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? When I was like running around like crazy, like driving all the way into ATV for like a pitch practice, and then like hauling butt down to Midtown to
Oh,
go to
wow.
work. And there were some really stressful days for sure. Or like I'd get an opportunity and I'd like beg to be let out of work and like frantically texting my schedule, like, can I please not come in this day? I have this opportunity, this pitch competition, and whatever. So it was definitely stressful, but I think, and this is what everyone says, right? Like, know your why. And my why was so much stronger. Like, I didn't need a day off to go get my nails done, or like, go shopping. Like I wanted a day off so that I could find the next opportunity or the next thing that I was going to do because I knew that where I wasn't the end all be all for me. I knew that
Mm.
there was something else out there for me and I just had to find it.
So were your other coworkers, were they like jealous of you?
I think some of them are. To be quite honest, I feel like when I made the announcement that I was kind of leaving, it was very mixed reviews. It was funny because I came home and told my husband that, the people that were new to the profession were like, why would you ever leave this profession? It pays so well and, it's so great and it's so exciting. And it was kind of hard for me to tell them, like, just give it a couple of years and see if
Years.
you still feel that way. The people who have been out about as long as me or longer, some of them love their job and they're like, great, more power to you, but I'm happy here. But I've had a lot of people come up to me and they're like, I got to get out. Like, I need something else. What else can I do? How did you do this? And I think there were definitely some people that were jealous, especially now when I say, oh, I work from home, 9 to 5. I don't have to get up at 4:30 anymore. They're like, I definitely get some scowls, but yeah, I don't feel bad about it. I worked really hard to find this, and I tell everyone, I'm like, there's absolutely no reason you can't do it if you know that what you're doing is not it for you, right? If you want to explore something else, but like you're going to be uncomfortable for a while. Like I was uncomfortable for a while, and I worked really hard for a while, and I still work really hard. I just have more direction now. I have
Mhm.
my goal now, but um it's not easy. And I mean, I could even go back further than that. I mean, starting in probably like 2014, I taught myself photography because I thought maybe I'll do photography. I started writing. I thought I would do that. I tried to learn how to code because I thought I would like become a developer. It was a massive failure. I was so bad at it. But I woke up at 4 in the morning for like about 6 months. I woke up at 4 every morning to spend an hour trying to learn how to code on this like class that I purchased. Like I've tried a lot of stuff.
Mm.
And I think anyone out there, you can sit around and say, oh, I don't like this job or this or that, but channel that into exploring, and that's what I encourage everyone who does seem a little bit jealous or asks me how I did it. I'm like, yo, you can do this too. Like, I don't have any super secret powers. Um, I mean, I have a lot of energy, but that's just because I really care about what I'm doing. I
Mm.
don't have a lot of energy when I'm not invested. But
Mm.
but if I really care about something, it gives me energy. And I hope that more people who are unhappy in clinical practice or something else, take this as your message to go explore. And you might not find it right away. It might take a while, but it sure beats just resigning yourself to a career that maybe isn't a great fit for you, or maybe there's another way that you could channel your knowledge and your skills in a more meaningful and enjoyable and fulfilling way.
That's really cool because I'm working on my side hustles right now, and the thing I don't have is energy.
Then maybe you have to pick a different side hustle.
It's like, but like, I really want, like, I enjoy like talking to people on my podcast. I just don't like doing the editing and all
The
that
thing
extra
that I think
stuff.
too that became apparent to me is that because I would get burned out too, when I was running my own business, I was doing all the things. And I realized that when you look at people who are successful, they don't do all the things. They know when to outsource. So if there's some component, if your skill and your joy is from talking to people, you can find someone to edit. Like it's going to cost you money, but if that's part of how you build this into a business, then you have to make decisions about what are the things that I like doing and what are the things I'm good at and what are the things that are too expensive for me when I look at it as my time being my most precious resource. And if this is
Hmm.
something I really don't enjoy, what are some aspects of it that I can offload? Because now, I mean, in my role now, I'm not doing everything. I'm doing a lot, but I have a team and the team does the things that I can't do, right? I cannot code. I will probably never code. I have a developer, right? You don't have to do it all. you find the things that you're good at that you like, and then you find a role that fits those things. You don't have to do it. We're all human. We all have strengths and weaknesses, and you just have to pay attention to those and say, okay, well, I can do this part, but not this part. So how can I find someone to help me with this part?
That is so awesome. So, is there anything you want to leave with the audience?
I think I left them with a lot. Uh, I think what I would like to leave the audience with is if there is a voice inside of you telling you that there's something else out there for you or calling you to something specific, that is valuable and important, and pay attention to it. Um, as we were all reminded in the pandemic, life may or may not be short. It might be long, it might be short, it might be cut short. You don't know how much time you have here. And I look at my patients who are sort of having end of life care, and I like to think of myself as being in that position and think, when I'm at the end of my life, whenever that is, if that's sooner or later, and I look back, I don't want to think, wow, I really wish I had blank, right?
Mm,
I want to live now in a way that's going to make 80-year-old, 90-year-old, 100-year-old Kathryn really proud. And to date, I look back and I don't regret anything. I don't regret my time in anesthesia. I love the people I have met. I love the lessons I have learned. I love the life that it has given me. Um, but I also am glad that when I realized it was time to make a move, that I went for it. And even if this turns out to be a massive failure, and I run with my tail tucked between my legs back to anesthesia, um, I can look back with pride and satisfaction knowing that I went for it.
mm,
And I just hope that I want to encourage everyone out there that if there's something that's calling you, or you feel like you have a calling, a separate purpose. I'm not saying everyone quit your job and go, travel the world and write a blog, right? Like it has to be practical. But if you truly feel that you have more value to offer the world and you feel called to do something, start exploring ways to do that. Because you certainly do not want to be in a career for decades and look back with regret and say, wow, I really wish I had like tried something else, or I really feel like I didn't offer this value of mine to the world that probably would have made the world a better place in some way.
yeah, and I think what helps me now is to know that the job I have now is investing into all the extra things that I want to do. So that's how I have to like formulate my
Yes.
thinking and saying like, okay, I'm doing this 12-hour shift so I can hire an editor.
Yes. And if you start to think of it that way, it gives more meaning to that shift, and you might be able to get through this shift a little bit better. I certainly thought of it that way. A lot of times I thought, okay, these 3 shifts, these are paying the mortgage. And then it's allowing me to have the other days to do other things. And sometimes it is a means to an end, and that's okay. I think we all feel like we have to be driven solely by patient care, but there's a time and a place, and maybe you've done that and now you're ready for something else, and you're going to help the world in your own way. I mean, what you're talking about and sharing with people is really important and really valuable. And so I hope that you are able to offload the editing so that you can continue the good work and not burn yourself out on, even if it is your passion, you can still burn out on your passion.
True.
And I genuinely believe what you're doing is really important and really valuable. So thank you for doing it. And I really hope you find an editor.
I have one. I have an editor. I'm
Good.
just
Good.
But thank you so much, Kathryn, for taking the time out to be
Yes.
on Scrubs Unzipped.
Thank you
And
for having me.
I'm so glad that I actually got introduced to you from it was Atlanta Ventures.
Was it Kathryn?
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
She's like my number one hype woman. I adore her. She's so great. And she's so great at connecting people.
Yeah, she definitely is. And I went to like one of the healthcare tech open house thing. So yeah, we'll
Oh,
definitely
great.
connect and
Yeah, well, I'm gonna see you around ATV. Let me know
yeah.
next time you're gonna be there, and I'll try to make a stop by.
Okay, I
All
can't
right.
wait.
All
So
right.
thank you so much, Catherine. I don't want to take up
So
too
welcome.
much of your time. And I'll check you later. But
Sounds good. Thank you, Annmarie. Have a great one.
you
Nice talking
too.
to you. Bye.